Okay, let's unpack this. We have been handed a stack of sources detailing a continuing epic.
It really is. It's part political thriller, part ancient fantasy.
And at its core, it's this really deep, surprising look into the nature of identity, of consequence, and this strange power that just binds life together.
That's absolutely right. And our protagonists, there are these figures of incredible duality. We have Richon, the former king who's spent years as a bear.
And Chala, the former princess who has, joyfully reclaimed her identity as a hound.
Exactly. And the sources drop us in right after this massive magical event has returned them to their preferred animal forms. But here's the twist.
There's always a twist.
Right. Instead of some kind of happily ever after in the forest, they're thrown into a confrontation with this terrifying new force that's threatening the very existence of their home.
The tension right from the start is just phenomenal. So what's our mission for this deep dive? We aren't just summarizing a story here.
No, not at all. We're extracting the foundational knowledge. I think our goal is threefold. First, we really need to dissect the complex ecosystem of magic in this world. Specifically defining what magic is versus this emerging threat of unmagic.
Right, they're presented as two very different things.
They are. Second, we have to track the intense personal development of Richon and Chala. Their struggle with their own identities is really the engine of the whole plot.
And finally,
we have to understand the true cost of redemption and what it takes to earn real power in this universe. This is so much more than a fantasy story. It's a detailed exploration of what makes life worth protecting.
let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
So this transformation back to a bear. You'd think this would be Richon's moment of freedom.
You would.
Yet the sources tell us something really surprising about his internal state. He's back in his strong animal form, but Richon the bear, he actually feels lonelier now than he did before any of the magic began. Why is that? What does that isolation tell us about his recovery?
It tells us that a physical change doesn't fix a profound internal problem. Richon's issue was never just about being a man.
It was about being a bad king.
A bad, selfish king who completely failed to connect with anyone. The bear body gave him instinct, it gave him power, but it didn't give him self-awareness. So now that the external pressure of being human is gone, that internal emotional failure is just magnified.
He has the strength of the bear, but the isolation of the king.
Perfectly put. And you see that immediately in what he observes. He's forced to be a witness to genuine connection.
He's watching Prince George and Princess Marit.
Yes, he sees their coordinated movements, their shared secrets, the way they just function as this effortless unit, and he recognizes this deep, seamless companionship.
It's like he's studying them.
He is, and it's heartbreaking, really. He reflects on his own past relationships, specifically mentioning Lady Finnick, and he concludes with this stunning honesty that despite everything he's lived through, he still hasn't learned love, not in that coordinated, reciprocal way.
So the physical change just gave him the space to finally admit his emotional failure. And that's where the loneliness comes from.
Exactly. He's recognizing a joy that he feels fundamentally incapable of reaching, at least not yet.
Now, if Richon's change led to this isolating self-reflection, Chala's transformation is the perfect counterpoint. It's just explosive sensory freedom.
Oh, completely. She is ecstatic to be a hound again. The sources are so vivid about it. She appreciates the strength, the speed, the simple joy of having a powerful jaw and tireless legs.
And crucially, the freedom of choice.
Yes, that's the key, isn't it? The freedom of choice that was completely denied to her when she was magically forced into the role of a human princess. Her internal state is just one of relief and physiological perfection.
But there's a complication. This lingering dual identity.
There is. She suffers these persistent nightmares.
And they're not, dreams of being chased by a predator or something.
No. They are haunting, vivid replays of her forced human existence. He dreams of human songs, human stories, even letters.
It's the cultural residue, isn't it? Her body is a perfect hound, but that human experience, as traumatic as it was, left this distinct intellectual footprint she just can't shake.
Exactly. She can run, she can hunt, but then all of a sudden she's trapped by the memory of a written word or a melody. It suggests that the human transformation, even though it was unwanted, embedded a level of consciousness that even the strongest magic can't completely wipe away.
So you have this duality. Richon's emotional isolation and Chala's cognitive residue. And that feeds directly into their biggest practical challenge right now.
Communication.
The communication barrier is almost, I mean, it's absurdly frustrating when you think about how close they are and what they've been through together.
It is. Chala, having been human, can speak the language of the hounds perfectly. She can communicate really complex ideas to other hounds.
But Richon, as a bear, can only speak the language of bears.
And they do try to find solutions. Chala tries to teach him this elaborate sign language she'd worked out with Mette.
But he just can't or won't learn it. Sources say he's too old, perhaps, or too used to living alone.
That self-reliance, that kingly isolation, it means he just can't adapt to a new method of communication that requires, collaboration. He's never had to.
So they're stuck. They fall back on silent gestures, on avoidance, just painful guesswork, which of course just deepens their isolation and makes that contrast with the easy, constant companionship of George and Mette all the more obvious.
A deeply bonded pair who literally cannot talk about the deepest problems they're facing.
And it's in this vulnerable, isolated state that this new existential threat appears.
Right. Chala is out exploring the forest on her own, trying to prove her self-sufficiency to the bear, and she discovers a strange trail.
The description of the scent is so specific it smells of a familiar wild cat, which is unsettling enough.
But it's mixed with something profoundly wrong, a coldness, a lack of life energy that just screams at her instincts to run.
And this is our introduction to the Catman.
It is, and the prologue is so crucial for understanding this antagonist. He wasn't born a monster. He was a natural creature that was warped by human vanity.
He was originally a wildcat, right? A very intelligent one.
Uncannily intelligent, capable of crafting a flute from a bone, and this young student of magic, proud of his new power, decides to transform this amazing cat into a man.
And it was a catastrophic failure.
A complete disaster. It creates this perfect storm of failure and rage. He couldn't speak the cat language anymore because his mouth and throat were changed, and his new human hands were, quote, too soft for the kill.
So it stripped him of his entire identity and his means of survival.
Everything. He was abandoned, forced into this life as a beggar and a thief, viciously combining a man's clever hands with a cat's vicious speed. And this failure, this is the origin of the Catman's unmagic.
It's born from vengeance and self-loathing.
Exactly. Unlike George's magic of restoration or the wild man's magic of stewardship, the Catman's power comes from a place of pure hatred, born of fundamental displacement. He tried to get the student to reverse the transformation. It failed, and he killed him.
So what he wields isn't just the absence of magic, it's an active draining force. The sources call it unmagic.
And Chala witnesses its effect with chilling clarity. She sees the Catman drain a paralyzed fish of its life force.
And not by just killing it.
No, that's the scary part. He just stares at it, slowly draining it of whatever it was that made it alive. The scales turn this disturbing, inert, dead gray.
That phrase, draining it of whatever it was that made it alive, that's the definition of unmagic.
It is. It's not physical death. It's the draining of will and essence. And what's truly terrifying is the radiating ecological impact. The effect goes way beyond the victim. It affects the forest itself, which takes on this feeling of cold death. It just rips the life and the connection from every living thing in a radius.
Richon experiences this firsthand, this terrifying apathy.
He does. He steps into this line of gray, and he feels this unnatural cold that is fundamentally different from any natural cold he's ever felt.
It disconnects his mind from his body.
Completely, making him feel as though he is watching himself die with no feeling at all.
And that detail, that's the key intellectual nugget right there. Natural elements, even freezing cold, they prompt a survival response. Your heart pounds, your mind fights.
But unmagic induces complete apathy towards your own death. It paralyzes the will to live. It is the absolute antithesis of the wild man's magic, which is all about binding life together.
And the encounter escalates immediately. The Catman, guided by Chala's scent, tracks them back to their cave.
Contaminating the whole area with a barrier of gray and cold. The home they just reclaimed is now tainted. It's unusable.
So the personal isolation they were feeling is now a physical reality. They're displaced and hunted by a force that represents ultimate active apathy.
The danger has gone from personal conflict to a full-blown existential threat.
Okay, so realizing that this cold death is massive, unnatural, and spreading, the bear and the hound know they need help.
Their only option is to seek out Prince George. They believe he has the great magic that's capable of undoing or fighting this threat.
But the political landscape they're walking into is volatile, to say the least.
Very. George and Mette are fighting a war on two fronts. Externally, against enemies who despise animal magic, and internally, just trying to establish their school of magic.
And the sources are stark about this. We're told that people who can speak to animals have been killed. A body was burned and left at the castle gate as a gruesome warning. The stakes could not be higher.
And this high-stakes environment gets even more complicated because of a personal revelation. The hound notices, through scent and a change in her balance, that Mette is pregnant.
So suddenly George isn't just protecting an ideology anymore.
No, he's protecting his future dynasty.
Yeah.
The pressure on him is immense.
Richon and Chala lead him to the contaminated area. They're confident in his power. But this is where the limits of his magic, what you called obedient magic, are really exposed.
Dramatically exposed. George tries to enter the cold death zone, and he's immediately physically overwhelmed. He tastes the unmagic and just falls flat on his face, retching.
That physical reaction is so important. It shows that even great benevolent magic is just repelled by the Catman's force.
It is, and George is forced to confess his powers are not enough, and he gives this beautiful, eloquent analogy to differentiate his magic.
Right, he says his magic is restorative or redirective.
Like cutting a new channel for water that is already flowing. It's useful, it's practical, it's ordered, but it is not elemental. It's not world-changing.
He says it's not like filling a stream that has gone dry with water one must call from the sky to fall just so.
That is the essential insight. George's magic is maintenance magic. It's governance. It restores what is broken. The threat they're facing, however, requires creation. It requires primal power.
So George admits that only someone who knows more of magic than I can fight this. And this is the moment that redirects the entire deep dive toward the history of the wild man.
Right. George recounts this legend to give them context for a being who might possess that kind of primal elemental power, what we're calling wild magic.
And the legend centers on two figures: Tors, the giant warrior, and the bear killer, a cunning wolf leader.
They start this desperate, species-defining race across the globe, with the loser paying the ultimate price. But the bear killer adds this crucial condition that turns it from a personal rivalry into this cosmic test of societal cooperation.
He insists that their own kind, all men versus all wolves, be allowed to help them.
And this condition immediately exposes the fundamental philosophical difference between human and animals in this world. The sources really focus on human selfishness. Tors is wounded, he's delayed, because human villagers won't help a stranger without demanding labor.
Citing poor harvests or just simple inconvenience, they're trapped in this transactional thinking.
And the line that's so chilling is, if he won his contest, they would never know or care.
Wow.
But the wolves, on the other hand, demonstrate true pack mentality. The bear killer is aided constantly by other wolves who see his victory as their collective victory. And this provides the philosophical foundation for the wild man's power, the strength of species-wide cooperation. It's the antithesis of human isolation.
The tale culminates in this moment of shared desperation. Tors and the bear killer are caught in a massive tidal wave.
And in the ultimate survival response, they reach for each other. In that moment of complete mutual aid, they are fused into a single entity, the wild man. And crucially, he's a creature who can shift form seamlessly and is happy with the change. He embodies this synthesis of the best parts of both species.
That's a beautiful, essential piece of lore. It defines wild magic as being born from shared vulnerability. But this philosophical lesson is just brutally interrupted by political reality.
Right. While George is telling the story, the blonde-haired boy from his school attacks him.
And the betrayal is rooted in Richon's past laws and George's current failures.
The boy is furious. He accuses George of using them as servants, but the core accusation is personal. George failed to protect the boy's own father, who was judged and burned for having animal magic. He screams at him, "You turned your back on him," and then listened to him cry out for help as he died in agony.
This betrayal shows Richon, the former king, exactly what happens when power is centralized and trust is misplaced. And it escalates instantly.
The tattooed man stabs George in the stomach. The entire school, the very source of George's hope for a new kingdom, turns against him, seeking to bring down the whole regime. George and Mette are forced to retreat for urgent medical care.
The message is crystal clear. The kingdom's politics are too toxic, too consumed by internal strife to fight the existential threat.
So Richon and Chala are left standing there, alone, and they have to assume the burden. Richon uses a stick and scratches mountains and an arrow in the dirt.
Pointing north.
To the source of wild magic, to the wild man. The fight is now theirs alone.
So this journey north, it forces Richon to shed the last vestiges of his old selfish kingship, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. He feels compelled to witness the slow, agonizing death of his forest. He calls it his last gift to the creatures. He forces himself to measure and observe the expanding cold death zone, and he feels this profound, unexpected grief and deep, self-flagellating guilt for all the creatures he'd previously condemned and ignored as king.
And this act of witnessing, it leads to this moment of desperate primal altruism.
It does. Richon stops at this mound where a doe is slowly dying inside the unmagic. And driven not by survival, but by this desperate need to save something, he throws himself into the death zone.
To save her fawn from its dying mother's womb.
Exactly.
Wait, he survives being immersed in the unmagic. That's a huge deal.
It is monumental, and the source explains why. He realizes he survives because of his renewed will to live. The Catman's power, as we've said, relies on inducing apathy. By actively choosing self-sacrifice, by asserting this desperate will to protect life, Richon resists the core nature of the unmagic.
It's his first truly unkingly, purely selfless act. It proves his internal transformation is happening faster than his physical isolation would suggest.
Right, and as they press on deeper into the mountains, they encounter Frant, Chala, and their children.
A family of shapeshifters.
Yes, who can seamlessly change between human and hound forms, and they live in hiding because of the constant persecution.
Their very existence just reinforces the necessity of this whole fight. They confirm that humans with animal magic have to live in fear.
But they also offer this fascinating philosophical debate that really mirrors the internal conflict of Richon and Chala. Frant, the father, wants his children to have security, to enjoy human culture, books, and dances.
But Chala, the mother, provides the counterpoint, the voice of the wild. She argues the children are happiest and most whole as animals.
She passionately believes that the more animal one has, the more magic one possesses. It raises this question: is the goal integration or separation?
And this debate is immediately leveraged by Chala. She has a critical realization.
She can speak to them perfectly in the hound language. She can circumvent the communication barrier she has with Richon.
And she uses this shared language to alert them to Prince George and his school, convincing them that George offers the best hope for safety and the freedom to use their magic without constant fear.
It's a great moment that shows Chala's value as a connector, as a diplomat, leveraging her deep knowledge of both worlds. But their journey continues higher, and the environment changes drastically.
Richon and Chala start to feel this immense, overwhelming pressure from the wild man's raw, untamed magic in the mountains.
And Richon's reaction to this raw wild magic is so revealing. He describes it like being at a banquet when he was king. Even when his stomach is full, he feels this uncontrollable desire for more power, wanting just one more bite of the fine meal.
He feels both fear and intense magnetism.
It's the addictive draw of pure, untamed strength, something his weak, young king self always craved.
And then they finally reach the source. The wild man, he's described not as some hulking beast, but as frail, grizzled, and wiry.
Yet he speaks a language that is pure magic, and it's perfectly understandable to both of them. Chala instantly identifies this as the essence of the wild man's power, the ability to unify consciousness through magic itself.
And the wild man reveals his immense cosmic role.
He explains that magic and unmagic are twin lovers destined for this destructive embrace, a final conflagration that will destroy all living things.
So his life's task is just to delay this inevitable destruction, to buy magic more time to flourish. And he admits he's weakening.
And crucially, he reveals the deep backstory of Richon's transformation, shattering the illusion that it was just some random curse.
The wild man confirms he changed Richon to a bear years ago, specifically to stave off unmagic's power.
Forcing him to live another life, to feel the need for magic, and to understand the connection between humans and animals. The transformation wasn't a curse, it was a cosmic apprenticeship.
He demonstrates his power by tearing open a gate in time, showing Richon his past, a time of abundant magic, but still less than the time before that.
He's showing him the slow, steady decay of their world's essence. And he tells Richon that his kingdom needs him to go back to the past to stop the unmagic at its source before the entire timeline is irrevocably corrupted.
Richon protests furiously. He's afraid for Chala's safety, and he's afraid of his own ability to function as a human king again.
He tries to bargain. He says if Chala stays behind, he'll abandon the mission and just fight the unmagic in the present until he dies. It forces the wild man's hand.
And this is the pivotal moment of sacrifice, isn't it?
It is. The wild man gives Chala this final, earth-shattering choice. Return with Richon as a hound companion, or return as a human woman.
And she chooses the human form, asking to be named Chala, meaning human woman, in the language of the hounds.
And her motivation here, it just defines her entire character arc. She chooses humanity explicitly to share far more than we do now, and to better help Richon understand his human self.
She willingly sacrifices her animal freedom, the thing she loved the most, for the sake of his psychological and political success.
It is the ultimate act of pack loyalty, and their new human forms reflect this transition perfectly. Richon returns as a man, healed, but surprisingly weak-thin, soft in the stomach, lacking muscle, a weak human.
A body that mirrors his emotional immaturity.
Precisely. Chala, however, is new and unique. She's not Princess Marit. She's her own woman with dark hair, black eyes, and a lean, strong face, retaining the speed and grace of a hound. She is the physical embodiment of the blending of species.
So the immediate challenge for them is adjustment. Chala finds her new human body a thorn in her paw. Uncomfortable, inefficient.
But true to her choice, she immediately shifts her focus to Richon's struggles. She sees his physical weakness, his complete lack of technique, like his hopeless attempts to catch fish, showing his impatience.
She internalizes her mission right away. She vows to treat him as the leader of her pack.
To offer guidance and tough love to help him grow into the man he should be.
Meanwhile, Richon is immediately haunted by his old insecurities. He feels useless and contemptible in his weak, soft body, just like he did when he was first made king at 14.
And this physical weakness forces him into this deep self-reflection about his origins and his failings. He thinks intensely about his parents. He remembers his father, King Seltar, a man of books who taught lessons through these elaborate parables.
Like the one about the rich man who grew fat and needed poverty to truly appreciate wealth.
And Richon realizes he's now living that parable, forced back into weakness to find his strength.
He also recalls his mother, a powerful woman who embraced her dual nature. She would point out her scarred side and insist it was her obligation to show her true face.
A crucial thematic point. Richon needs to stop hiding behind the power of the throne or the bulk of the bear, and instead show his true, flawed human self to his people.
But that self-reflection is immediately overshadowed by a painful reality. They encounter villagers who detail the true, horrifying cruelty of King Richon's past laws against animal magic.
And the sources provide heartbreaking details. Sons were maimed for just talking to antelopes. Mothers were burned at the stake for their children.
The collective weight of this terror is overwhelming. Richon is forced to confront the fact that his reign was one of institutionalized terror and murder against his own subjects.
And this realization is a massive internal blow. It culminates in his blunt, honest confession, "I am a murderer."
This self-identification as a murderer is the turning point, isn't it?
It is. It finally eliminates his narcissistic focus on his own inadequacy and shifts it entirely to his duty to save the kingdom he destroyed. He's galvanized by guilt, focused on immediate action.
They finally reach the royal palace, but instead of a symbol of power, it's a ruin. Abandoned, fouled with urine and filth.
The physical state of the palace just perfectly reflects the decay of Richon's reign. And amidst all that filth, they find one loyal creature, a horse named Crown, suffering from a severe leg wound.
And in this really pivotal and surprising moment, Chala instinctively touches Crown.
And her latent magic heals the horse completely. Richon is stunned. She is performing George's obedient magic, this restorative, life-giving act, without even knowing she had that power in her human form.
It establishes her as this quiet force for healing, a perfect complement to Richon's eventual raw power.
So Richon knows he needs intelligence. He needs to know what's going on. He finds an armless blacksmith.
Whose arm was severed by the royal steward as a punishment.
Right. And the blacksmith reveals that the steward has taken control of the army by forcing villagers to join, holding their wives and children hostage. This is critical political context.
The blacksmith suggests that Richon, the young king, was simply used as much as any of us were by his ambitious advisors.
Which shifts the blame from just Richon's incompetence to deliberate external manipulation by the royal steward and the Lord Chamberlain, the true architects of the kingdom's downfall.
But the unmagic isn't just a monster with a great touch anymore. It's a political ideology spreading among humans.
A terrifying thought. In a village, Chala recognizes that pervasive, cold scent of unmagic around an animal trainer. And this man boasts openly of transforming horses and hounds into living lumps of clay, stripped of their will and language. He calls this taming.
He's using a black leather glove that just reeks of unmagic, revealing that the force has been industrialized. It's being deliberately wielded by humans for domination and profit.
The systematic stripping of individuality and will, cloaked as domestication. Chala, Seeing the soullessness of these animals feels this profound empathy. She thinks, such a creature was better dead.
This political contamination is the final trigger for Richon's magical awakening. The pressure builds until he experiences this overwhelming sensory convergence.
He feels and tastes the entire world around him at once. The sound of ants walking, the scent of an owl's nest, the taste of far-off pine trees. He says it's utterly exhausting, like drowning as a child.
This is the return of the wild magic, but in a human body.
And in his disorientation, Chala points out the physical manifestation of it. He temporarily transformed his human hand into a bear paw.
He realizes the magic is inherent in him. He can now shift forms, but only into the bear, his natural shape, as the wild man called it.
And Chala also rediscovers her ability to shift into a hound, confirming that the wild man just gave them back what was always their truest identity.
So Richon and Chala, now able to transform and filled with this new purpose, they approach the battlefield, and what they find is horrifying.
It is. They discover the Catman's new lair, a massive clearing where thousands of animals lie dead, tragically grouped by species. Shrews, foxes, bears, eagles, hawks.
And Richon connects the terrifying dots. He realizes these animals were the collective force the wild man had called to fight him during his original transformation in the past.
And they were subsequently caught by the Catman and killed en masse. It just demonstrates the scale of the Catman's power and the depth of his malice.
But here's the paradox of protection. The animals' bodies haven't disintegrated.
Right. Their collective latent magic has protected them in death against the decay of the unmagic. The life force is gone, but the magical essence remains.
In Chala, shifting into a hound, she howls this deep, profound lament for each animal, feeling the immense, crushing loss of her extended pack.
Richon realizes that the unmagic had caught them unawares, but they had, maybe subconsciously, chosen not to fight back with their combined magic. This resulted in their preservation and death like a reserve tank of energy. And this collective, unused magic begins to descend toward Richon.
It's described as warm, heavy, and demanding to be used.
But Richon feels the full weight of his past. He feels utterly unworthy. He says, I am the last man who should take it, the very last. I am the cause of their death, and they hated me. The guilt is just immense.
And this is where Chala's role as pack leader is so essential, she doesn't comfort him.
No, she reminds him of the necessity of the fight. He has a battle to win, and this collective magic, this gift of atonement, is the only weapon they have left.
So Richon accepts the magic. It flows into him with immediate painful force, lodging the animal spirits inside him.
And the resurrection that follows is one of the most spectacular moments in the sources. Richon releases a great gray wolf spirit, which leaps out and gives life back to a dead soldier. He just keeps going, releasing wolves, elk, fox spirits into the fallen Illyrian soldiers, resurrecting them, healing their wounds.
The dead rise. Imbued with animal strength and magic, they create an army unlike any seen before. This is the ultimate fulfillment of that Taurs and bear killer myth.
The power of collective life and mutual aid, harnessed against the force of apathy. The resurrected army is terrifying, and it shakes the enemy's confidence to its core.
And amidst the chaos of this suddenly reversed battle, Richon finally identifies the traitors who ruined his youth.
He sees the Lord Chamberlain and the Royal Steward directing their respective armies, and he realizes they weren't just competing rivals. They had collaborated in his parents' deaths, working together to exploit his youthful weakness for their own power.
The battle turns decisively, and the Royal Steward, the architect of human domination via unmagic, tries to flee.
And Chala, driven by this deep protective rage, she tracks his pervasive scent of cold death. She follows him after he abandons his magically stripped horse.
She grants the soulless horse a quick death. She refuses to let the unmagic-tainted blood even touch her.
She tracks the steward to this dismal inn where he's meeting the Catman, and Chala is a silent witness to the steward's end. The Catman just touches him.
And the Royal Steward instantly freezes, crumbles, and turns into dust and ashes.
A clean, decisive, and utterly empty death. It's the perfect symbol for the fate of those who embrace apathy.
The Catman senses Chala, though. He emerges, smiling with what the source calls joyful destruction.
He touches her back, and the unmagic floods her body, burning her vitals, draining her life. He sees her magic and asks, with this cold curiosity, "Do you wish for death, then?"
This is the absolute climax of Chala's arc. And it's the true definition of how to fight unmagic. She doesn't use her magic for defense, or restoration, or shape-shifting.
No, she uses her magic offensively. She presses her deepest memories of life, joy, and wildness against the Catman.
She pours her entire magical essence, all the stored joy of being a hound, Her love for Richon, the freedom of the forest, she pours it all into him until he literally drowns in the feeling of true, wild magic.
She drains him of his hatred, his corruption, his memories. She fights apathy with an overwhelming life affirmation.
The cost is extreme, but the result is a total victory. The Catman is forced back into just a simple, non-magical wild cat.
But in her final, total act of magic, Chala is permanently transformed into a human woman. The Catman's unmagic leaves a permanent scar, and it seals off her ability to change forms ever again.
She is now fully human.
And the source details her profound grief, the loss of her physical identity, her wildness, her magical ability. She sacrificed the essence of her true self to save Richon and the world.
So Richon finds Chala. He's pained by her lack of magic and this permanent scar, but he refuses to let her leave.
He declares his love, recognizing that her selflessness, her willingness to give up the wildness she cherished, that showed him the precise path he had always aspired to follow. Duty over self, connection over isolation.
He doesn't just ask her to stay. He asks her to be his queen.
And this is the culmination of his redemption. He says he doesn't want a woman who is whole, meaning magically complete, but one who has shown him the way to be a good ruler.
He realizes she is more human, more vulnerable, more capable of sacrifice than he is, despite her hound origins.
And Richon immediately establishes this new regime founded on justice. He draws these clear lines between life and apathy. He publicly executes the animal trainer who spread unmagic.
Recognizing that the ideology of stripping will has to be visibly rooted out.
Right. And he addresses the political reality head-on. He publicly talks of the rumors of Chala being a she-bear, embracing her history openly and silencing the gossips.
He opens the royal guard and army to women. He even begins training in swordsmanship alongside his men.
Creating a true pack mentality within the human court. He has learned the painful lessons of succession and political vulnerability. He names a young woman, Haley, who has strong, latent magic and great compassion as his heir.
He's ensuring the future of the kingdom is secured by someone who blends power with empathy. He's confirming the stability of his new regime.
And then, many years later, Richon, now the king they needed, and Chala, the beloved queen, they return to the mountains. They're called by the sound and smell of death.
The wild man is dying. He's spent his essence delaying that conflagration.
And he delivers his final, immense instruction. Richon must take his place as the eternal protector of magic against unmagic.
Richon protests, of course. He cites the wild man's ancient, insurmountable power.
But the wild man just dismisses that. He insists Richon is uniquely suited, not because of raw strength, but because of his understanding of the horror of unmagic. Richon lived through it, he witnessed its effects, he fought its insidious nature. He understands the value of life because he was forced to confront his own legacy of murder and apathy.
The wild man's final gift, though, is purely personal, and it's profoundly moving.
It is. He gives Chala his ancient magic, which is powerful enough to overwrite the scar left by the unmagic.
And this gift doesn't just restore her magic meaning. She can shift forms again. It also allows her to have a child again.
This is the ultimate resolution of their struggle. It confirms that cosmic link the wild man hinted at. Magic is life, and the loss of magic had directly led to Chala's inability to conceive. By restoring her full connection to wild magic, he restores their future.
So Richon and Chala bury the wild man, and they disappear, fulfilling the legend by becoming the enduring protectors of magic in the forest. They return to their natural duality, a perfect synthesis of human duty and animal connection, ensuring that necessary balance is maintained for generations to come.
So here's where it gets really interesting. The synthesis of all this knowledge we've unpacked.
Right.
We started with two isolated figures, trapped by their own isolation and magical identity crises, and we ended with them becoming this blended, eternal foundation for their world's entire magical existence.
Their transformation arc, it illustrates this profound truth. True power isn't innate. It is earned through radical self-sacrifice, through witnessing suffering and embracing vulnerability.
Richon had to accept that he was a weak king and a murderer before he could finally be worthy of the collective wild magic of the forest.
And Chala. Chala had to choose to give up the very thing she valued most, the perfect simplicity and wildness of the hound, in order to become truly human enough to guide her human leader.
Her choice to become fully human, scarred, and vulnerable, that was the key catalyst for his redemption.
This whole deep dive draws this brilliant, stark contrast between magic and unmagic. Magic, whether it's George's obedient kind or the wild man's primal force, it's collective, it's selfless, life-giving, and it's willing to take different forms.
Whereas unmagic, embodied by the Catman and that treacherous royal court, is isolating, selfish, life-draining, and it results in mindless obedience like those magically stripped horses. The greatest threat wasn't some monster, it was the systematic stripping of will and connection.
I think the real aha moment for me is that to survive, Richon had to learn to blend George's obedient magic, the disciplined use of magic for governance and restoration.
With the wild man's wild magic, that untamed, primal power of connection and life.
And that blending only happened after he fully accepted the consequences of his flawed human past and found a truly selfless partner in Chala.
And that leads us to the provocative final thought we want to leave you with. The source clearly ties magic directly to life and fertility. The loss of magic meant Chala couldn't conceive. So if magic is constantly being drained by unmagic, this force of decay, apathy, and the systematic stripping of will, what does this imply for the longevity and future generations of any world, including our own, that struggles with institutional apathy and isolation?
Perhaps the enduring lesson from The King and the Hound is that true life can only be sustained and true power only achieved by recognizing and defending the inherent value, the wildness, and the vital complexity in every single living thing around us. You have to fight apathy with joy.